About extensive changes that occurred on his layout. He moved to a new home, I believe 1,800 feet from 1,000, so an expansive change on the layout. And he'll update you on those changes as well as some other interesting facts. Just bear with us with the lights. I'm going to see if I can get somebody to lower them so that we can get a better presentation for Mike and better viewing for all of you. So with that, Mike.
Look at that, you just said it.
Voice of God.
We're going. Thank you. And you've been paying attention, I can see. Hey everybody, been a while since I've been here, so the reason I've got those dates in there is I'm starting from the point of my last clinic here. And one thing I'm curious about is anybody here that was at my last clinic here? Oh, geez, okay. So my last clinic ended where I put an addition onto my house.
Yeah.
And I have a walkout basement, so I was able to just add the addition and basically extend the basement into a ground level building that almost doubled the size available for the layout. And I just figured, you know what? I'm not getting any younger, so why not? On the plan here, this was like an early plan that I did. So this wall here represents the former outside wall of the house. This is the footprint of the addition, and it also included here, this is where the model shop is now. All of this was driveway. So the idea was that this Pittston yard that used to be in this section here literally got moved out into the new building, and then I had to design all kinds of connective tissue in order to join all the railroad together again. This is the addition right here. So it looks small from here because it's at an angle. But basically these two windows and this back section here of my old workshop, all of this is the new addition. And it kind of flares out in between the two buildings as you get in there. So when I was at the breakthrough point, again, this being the former outside wall of the layout, this mess here was basically what I had to deal with. I had to design a new opening here. We had to put some glue lambs up top there. I ended up moving electrical panels, and it really was a lot of infrastructure kind of work. A lot of this presentation will be in before and after. So there's your before. And there's the after. So this is the way it is right now. That opening that you just saw in the previous slide is right here. This is the beginning of the paper mill at Ransom, which is just to the right of this. You will see that. This is a giant peninsula here that you'll see more of, but this is the D&H coming through into Manuka Junction, crossing the Lackawanna River here. And this scenic divider back here, Pittston Yard is on the other side of that. This swing bridge here, which has at this point in time 7 track connection points on it, it's all constructed out of steel, welded steel. And I decided to put all my eggs in one basket and not have a bunch of duck unders. So it was a gamble, because if you don't build it right and it doesn't work right, you're gonna have all your problems in one spot like that. But it's been great. We just open and close it and walk through it, and we do it many, many, many times per session. And frankly, I don't know what I would do without it. This is the area where the Pittston yard used to be. So it's about 22 foot long, curved in the corner section. And this is all new real estate now, opened up for what I again call the connective tissue. This opening here used to be a people door from the driveway into what used to be my office when I had my office in this room. So I maintained this opening because it's how the Conrail main line gets from here and follows its way south. And there's just a little hint of the opening there in the corner. Nowadays, this is what it looks like there. It's a nice gentle grade going up, but with a telephoto it looks kind of dramatic. And this is the beginning of the interlocking at DuPont, the connection with the Delaware and Hudson. This is that area under construction. I did the entire thing out of one piece of plywood and then just bent it so that I would have nice, gentle transitions on the grades. But you can see there's that little pass through there. There's the former opening that we were looking at earlier. And this is all going to be Conrail going into towards Pittston Yard. That's what it looks like looking up the connector. Eventually, this will have signals and be an actual interlocking, but that's a little bit farther down the road. In that corner that we saw earlier, I'm modeling the area called Jenkins, which is right before Laurel Run, and this is how I chose to frame up the curved corner. What it looks like today, a little compressed looking in the shot, but this is Intercity's Cold Storage and James Brown Foods. It's actually two consignees that share a building. It does look squished, doesn't it? Those are 50-foot cars, so. And of course, the ubiquitous 84 lumber, this is a condensed version of their distribution center that's down in my modeling area. Believe it or not, these 84 logos are available on their website. You can just download them and make the sign, so that helped a lot. And I just basically winged all of this based on photos of different 84 lumbers. So, a different view during construction of that same pass-through area, showing you the support column and all of that, and miscellaneous piping. All of that had to be hidden. And you can see on the floor some blue tape. I'm starting to plan out where the different pieces of the layout are going to go. This is what that area looks like now. A lot going on here, but there's a lot going on in the prototype here as well. So outside here you have the D&H main. Here you have the tracks that are going into the Kerr-McGee tie treatment plant. This is the connection at Langcliffe Junction that connects from this Avoca area over to the D&H. And Avoca Yard is just behind these trees, just like it is on the prototype. So it's a little compressed, but basically on the prototype, that's kind of how it is. It's a big, deep scene, as you'll see in other pictures here. In the background here, you can even see the road bridge at DuPont. That's where the D&H crosses Conrail, which crosses the stream, and you get the Route 11 bridge above it. I got a tour of the area from a D&H guy, actually a Reading Northern guy, an engineer friend. And as soon as we went down there, I looked at that scene and I said, I gotta model this. It's just, I've never seen anything like it. This is Avoca Yard. This was an interesting area to build because it's like right in the middle of a pretty big peninsula. So this whole area on the other side of this tree line there was nothing there while we were building Avoca Yard. You had to do a dirty crawl and kind of go under and pop up there. All of these railroad ties and the rails were all hand painted. There was a lot of painting to do, and my buddy Mike Confalone helped me out with some of it. But I conceived of it as P&E staging. Basically, P&E will start out there or end up there. It's not something you're actively switching at. Is there a screen up there too?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are 3 monitors up here.
We're more sleeping.
Also, all that has short necks too.
This is coming into Avoca. Basically, you can either take this and go into Avoca Yard, or you can come into here and go to Kerr-McGee. This is a Conrail job that operates out of Pittston, and basically it's the yard switcher that runs over to this consignee. So I like this view because it really shows all of the interconnection stuff that had to be made. This is the former outside wall, and this is all of the beginning of that peninsula we were just looking at. This is the route down to what was now Pittston Junction and going into Pittston Yard, and this is the beginning of, it's the very, very beginnings of the Kaiser Valley Industrial Park and D&H Taylor Yard on the other side, but it shows you just what a raw state it was in at that point. Here's what it looks like now. There's that same wall, a styrene backdrop was curved around that pole. Lots of trees and a hatch in this area enables me to get in there if I need to. But it's a really, really deep seam. This is the Lackawanna River. And in this little groove, you can barely see it, but that's the Taylor secondary that joins up with the D&H over here. With Avoca Yard on the other side, Kerr-McGee, D&H Main, and the Isle. It's interesting in this view, if you look way in the distance, you can actually see Mashopin, which is on the backside of the Mahoopany divider. So I guess there's a couple of trees there. People have asked me how many trees are on the layout, and I'm sort of keeping track of it, but I'm right around 4,900 at this point. I think I'm gonna make the 5,000 goal. Not that it was a goal. And if you told me that I was gonna do 5,000 trees, I would have said, you're nuts. No way, no way.
Looks like a heck of a lot more than that.
Well, I mean, you know, in that picture, I have to say, you're not gonna see probably that many super trees in one view in most places.
You own stock in Super Tree?
I do not. This is a now, we're just around the corner a little bit here, so this shows the bridge over the Lackawanna, but there's Manuka Junction. And here's how Conrail gets into the trackage that they retain. And this, of course, is Taylor Yard along in here. Down below, you can see a staging level here. That's how you get to what we call Sayre staging. So that comes off of the bridge, the swing bait bridge at a lower level. And that's sort of the lead to that yard, and you'll see that at some point too. Okay, so this is how Conrail gets through the opening here and gets into DuPont. So you can see the beginnings of the D&H crossing here. Here's the Conrail mountain cutoff coming through here. And as you can see, it heads right down into here and will curve into Pittston Yard. This track underneath is the Taylor secondary, which heads up to Taylor. So it kind of looks like wood spaghetti here, because it is. That's what happens when your prototype is a bowl of spaghetti. Here's what it looks like now. Here's the stream, which is called Mill Creek, as I recall. And at that time, Mill Creek ran under track 2 longitudinally. I'd never seen a railroad bridge cross a stream lengthwise. So that was pretty cool. And all of the granite abutments and footings for that type of structure are still in place there. There's the D&H above, and the Route 11 bridge is modeled pretty faithfully, so I was able to get good pictures of it. All of these uprights are made from foam, believe it or not. And at
Back
one
in the day,
time,
Mike, the transit went over the top of the 4 of them.
Laurel Line, right?
Laurel Line went over the top of all of them.
Probably just this side of it, right?
Yes.
Fortunately, that wasn't in my era. Here's the D&H heading under, taken from the sidewalk, leaning over. And I swear this wasn't staged. But sometimes it happens during an op session, and I think for this photo I actually requested the D&H to pause so I could get the shot. But you can see I don't want to say superstructure, the underpinnings of the longitudinal bridge there, and there is water all the way around the corner there. Now, a lot going on in this area. You can see right there's a hole. There's a very entertaining YouTube video, about 2 minutes on my YouTube channel, of me attempting to drill the 14 holes through my foundation that needed to be drilled to make that hole. I think I drilled 3 of them and realized I was about to die. So I contacted my contractor, who's a real man. And he and his cohort came down, and even they had a hard time doing the rest of it, so I felt a little better after I watched them. But the 14 holes were needed because the track to fit into the other side here is coming through at an angle, so it had to be a pretty good length of hole in the concrete. So this is staging level, and this staging level is what continues down into Sayre staging. And there's another whole level here that you'll see that is above this. So there's that staging level we were just talking about. Here's the area where the mill at Ransom will be. There's a gap here because my buddy Dave suggested that we actually move this down and lengthen the scene a little bit and give it a little more distance between there and Tunkhannock. Proved to be a good thing to do because now there's some trees in here that give you the feeling that you're actually covering some distance. So that was a good thing to move down. And you can see all my electrical panels in here. They're hidden behind a styrene panel that's held in place with Velcro. Here's what it looks like now. You can kind of see how the backdrop with a little bit of glare in here is curving around the electrical panels. But this is the pulp facility at Ransom, and here's the mill itself. The entire thing was basically designed from a center spread picture in one of Mike Bednar's books. And I didn't relish the thought of cutting that many exact openings in plastic. And I ended up talking with Jimmy Simmons of Monster Model Works, and we ended up drawing this thing up, and he laser cut it all out of his really nice brick material. And the titchy windows just fit right in there perfectly. So really, it was a very enjoyable structure to build. And it's kind of a key scene on the layout. Actually, the Mike Bednar book has a picture from this angle. So it's modeled pretty faithfully. A little bit of condensed a little bit in terms of the depth. And it's always a favorite thing for mainline trains to blast through there at track speed. This gives you a good overall view of how it looks from the aisle. One look at these and you know they're coming from a hooping. Just up the line is Tunkhannock. And Tunkhannock, as a railroad town, kind of disappeared at one point when they did a Route 6 bypass. So everything that I liked about Tunkhannock is gone in modern times, or most of it anyway. But Wayne Sittner happened to take some really good pictures of that Tunkhannock area in my era, and that's what enabled me to do Hall and Golden Feeds and some other things that you'll see coming up here. This is so this is that staging level that I talked about. Here's the other room that the tunnel goes into. This is how you get to Allentown staging. And the gate I was talking about is like right in this area here. Here's what it looks like today. So there's a little bit of the Ransom Mill, and this is how trains come and go from Allentown staging. This track here is how trains get to Sayre staging. This little track here is how the TMSL gets to Monroton with a single grain cart going down to the feed mill there. And that's going to appear at some point down here. That's as yet unbuilt. I added a little bit of scenic treatment to the cross aisle bridge here when I started to work on the Pittston Roundhouse. And this was part of doing that scene too. Basically, for many years, this was just a debris field. I don't know if every layout has a debris field, but I know mine always has. But as you start to finish your layout, get farther and farther along, you start to run out of places for debris fields, which is what my workshop looks like it does. So, this is a very early photo showing the staging level under Pittston Yard in place. And we had calculated very carefully how we were going to get this 22-foot long thing from one building to the next, and we had to make a turn. And I measured and measured and measured, and I was pretty sure it's going to make the bend. So I devised a way of, see this roll around cart here? These are carts that I built for my A-line boxes, and I built a little support on each side of it for several of these carts, and we dropped the whole entire assembly down on top of the carts. We were able to roll the whole thing easily with a couple of guys, and I thought, beautiful, I love it when a plan comes together. And we got the thing all swung around and jammed up against the furnace room, and I needed like 2 more inches. Just didn't happen. There was just no way, even with soaping it. So I ended up having to lop off the curved portion and rejoin it in the room close. So now we're starting to build the benchwork here that where Pittston Junction will be. Is the door that enters from the outside driveway. More benchwork now coming into play here. That's what it looks like today. So this is the, I believe it's pronounced Duryea.
Duryea.
Someone corrected me, thankfully. Duryea Auto Parts here. So photogenic. I just had to model that. And the sign is actually a picture that I snapped out of the window of my car when I just kind of drove up into the driveway. There's another one on the building there. These are actual houses that Rich Cobb built for me. This whole area here is in sort of a weirdo kite-shaped spot that resulted from how the building is angled and joined to the house. And the entire junkyard was actually built in my workshop and carried through the aisles by me on a piece of foam, like a giant pizza, and then just kind of planked in place, and it fit, fortunately. But in this view, you can see the Taylor Secondary coming down, the viaduct that the mountain cutoff crosses it over is just right in this area. You'll see that shortly. And this is CPYG over here. It's a set of crossovers. There's the viaduct. I was able to model this pretty much exact, based on a lot of good photos that a buddy of mine took of it, and also some measuring that was done via Google Maps. Very fun thing to build. I included this photo because it shows you that as you cross the viaduct and then head down this way, there you are in DuPont. But you're back actually rounding the corner, there's the wall, so you're really in another portion of the basement. So by the time you walk back around and get there, you feel like you've actually gone somewhere. And once in a while, you catch a train coming back on the Taylor Secondary and a train coming into Pittston. This is Duryea Junction here. This is how you would get to Avoca Yard or Kerr McGee up through here. So, just to locate you here, there's that opening that takes you to the other room. Here's where Pittston Junction will be. The Pocono Northeast now comes down along this wall, and here's the staging level under Pittston Yard. Nothing here yet. And here's what it looks like today. Actually, it's a little farther along, but Pittston Yard, backdrop in place, all of that. This is a future salt pile. That's just a placeholder. And these are the tracks that go off towards the Pocono Northeast. This one kind of shows you how the whole room is starting to come together. Again, an early construction photo, but you can see this is the old, this is where I had to cut it. There's the Allentown staging, and that takes you into the basement. Today, it looks like that. One of the issues I had to solve was I was adding another outside track to be the main on Allentown Yard. So actually, this upper part is actually, you can see how it's cantilevered out wider than the old staging level. It was also interesting because we used to interact with Pittston Yard from the other side. That the aisle was on the other side in the room, so it was kind of it was a little weird to get used to seeing it from the wall side. We're well used to it now, of course. The engine terminal was, the engine servicing facility was modeled pretty faithfully from photos that Tony V. Sr. actually had taken some pictures there, and right in my era. So that was another fun project. Anybody guess what my favorite thing is in this scene?
Switcher.
Nope. Oh, come on.
Your Scenic tower?
Nope. It's the gas pump.
Telephone. Oh.
It's the gas pump. It was this weird green that I had to match, and I found one that I had to keep bashing a little bit, but it was in the picture, and it just looked right there. I'm not even positive why it's there. I don't know if they use it to fill up trucks or something, but it was just one of those little details I had to do. This is the bridge over the Lackawanna River that separates Pittston Junction from Pittston Yard. This backdrop photo was actually taken by Tony V. Jr. And I was able to use that photo and try to match the existing water to the water in the backdrop. Well, based on the colorization of that and the happy coincidence of all of the tree colors matching, that's one of those scenes that just kind of work. It's a little condensed, but it kind of captures the feel of that area. So there's that tunnel. You can see how the track kind of goes through there at an angle. This is that staging level. In fact, you can see all the drilled marks there. It really looks like it was blasted. And it ends up here. This is in that other room. So this is now just covering that area up, and this will be scenic through here, but as yet, what happens in this area is yet to be determined. So this shows you sort of my base scenery level. It's just green foam that's painted and dirted. I might put some static grass in the horizontal areas, but it's really a base for plugging trees into, and the green foam works very well for that. Early picture of how we were doing the bridge. So the bridge is all steel, and there's nothing on the bridge that will absorb moisture, which is why it's got a 2-inch foam base here for the tracks. The idea is you don't want expansion and contraction. So even on the shore side of each side of the bridge, that too is constructed out of steel. Now what I did find was that despite that, and despite the fact that it's lag bolted into the concrete, there's enough wood going back through here that in the July-August timeframe, even with a dehumidifier, even with central air conditioning, it was still pushing on this bridge a little bit. And I had to re-engineer it so that the wood portion of this is actually decoupled from that stand. I don't have that problem on this side because this is freestanding, but all of this is bolted to the wall. So I had to make that modification. And I think we already saw a little bit of how this looks now. It's just a different view, basically taken from the right-hand side, showing how now you've got a contiguous scenic area going in by Ransom Paper Mill, and there's Tunkhannock in the distance. So this is where I said the debris field was, and it was just bare. There was nothing there, just a bare blue wall and a lot of garbage on the miscellaneous stuff. Like if I had to find something, that's where I went first, because everything kind of landed there. But when I was working on Pittston Yard, I had left the area where the Roundhouse segment was going to be, because it was going to be a difficult project. And I was going to start some other area of the layout, and my buddy Confalone said, why don't you just finish that Roundhouse area, because then the whole Pittston Yard will be all scenic. So when I started to work on it, I realized that this was going to be the background of it when you were looking towards it. So first thing I did was finish this hillside. And then I started on the area. This was basically where I just stacked engines, just rows and rows of them here, as a place to land them, like a locomotive debris field. But I never built anything like the Roundhouse. With the angles and the curvature of it, all of that, it was just like the opposite of anything I'd ever built. So I had to do a lot of research to figure out how I was going to build it, and I chose to do a cardboard mock-up so that I could get a feel for the proportions and make sure it was going to fit the way I wanted it to there. That mock-up was also helpful when I was starting to design, actually build the Roundhouse itself. There's that hillside in the background that represents what I'm doing. Now you notice that Conrail is reversed here. That's because this photo is reversed. And the reason this photo is reversed is that's how I had to build the yard. So the yard is actually reversed. So I'm using this photo to kind of determine my proportions. And by taking pictures down near the engine terminal and seeing where the Roundhouse is and the back shop behind it, where the Coaling Tower needs to be. That's my guideline for how I'm designing the area. So at this point, there's the Roundhouse and the back shop under construction. Here's what it looks like today. There's a detailed article on this that will be in the next Model Railroad Hobbyist, and my Getting Real column that really covers everything that went into this in detail. Really interesting project, a lot of fun to do. Glad I'm only doing one. Little aerial view of it shows the relationship of it. Now this track here crosses the Conrail engine terminal on a diamond, and this represents the track that crosses the Susquehanna River, but doesn't. It actually ends there. We use this as a little terminus for one or two consignees for the Pocono Northeast. The concrete block material is more Monster Model Works wooden concrete block material. It's great stuff. At the northern end of Pittston Yard at Falling Springs, I found a picture of this little hut, if you will, and ended up modeling that and throwing that in there, and it added a lot of personality to just a bare spot on the layout. I have a favorite thing here too, yellow. I'm assuming that's an MU cable stand.
Yep.
A better view of the complicated connections on the bridge. The only thing that's there now is that there's a turnout here and a diamond here, and the Monroe track crosses here also. So you can see why alignment and adjustability is critical here. Everything is infinitely adjustable. I find that I have to make these adjustments maybe twice a year. Coming out of summer, getting into the drier months, I'll make some tweaks, and same thing in the late spring or early summer. These joints on this side have been redesigned with little adjustable Corian blocks, and I can make the adjustments in like a couple of minutes. There it is, all painted, and there it is with the semi-scenic spot. And this shows you the diamond that was added in the turnout. So it's a little nutty, but it works. I think it is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, it's 8 connections. In this photo, bench work is in place for the Conrail side and for staging, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do the D&H peninsula here. I had some foam backer rod, and I just started laying it out just to get a sense of where the aisle would be and where the pinch points would be. Here's one view of it now, actually standing at Pittston Junction, but that's the blob that was being laid out. And you see it's got a divider, so Taylor Yard is on one side, and the Kaiser Valley Industrial Park is along this side. Here's the mountain cutoff, CPYG, junkyard's down here, and there's the Duryea Viaduct down there heading into the other room. Pittston Junction. I was sick of looking at bare plywood, so I did some ground cover. You can see over here, there's a mock-up of the photo backdrop. And that was built out of pictures that I took on a yard tour, and it was taken from the triangle itself. I later went back to Pittston with my intention of maybe taking better photos or more photos and seeing how that would work. There's no sidewalk on that side of the road. You kill yourself trying to do that. And there's no place to jump over the guardrail on, and it wouldn't have been the right perspective, I realized while I was standing there trying to do that. So I ended up going with the photos that I had, and that's how it ended up. Mike Confalone did some Photoshop work for me in this, and I also made him cut it out for me. Because I thought, he's gonna complain about it so this way I don't hear a word. It's just, he's very happy with it. Another buddy of mine had recommended using, believe it or not, wallpaper paste to put this up. And I was very nervous about putting up this photo backdrop because it wasn't cheap to print, and it's in an awkward spot, and it's a high stakes thing because if I can get this up and in place, then everything else kind of flows from there. So, Confalone came down, my buddy Dave was with me. I put some foam up on top of Pittston Junction and I hopped up there. And Mike was in the other aisle and Dave was behind me. And we've got this thing that's covered with wallpaper paste, wet wallpaper paste. And basically it just went up and we smoothed it out and it had some wiggle time, but it adhered immediately. It took us 10 minutes to put up the backdrop. We couldn't believe it. It took longer to cut it out.
What is it printed on? Is it like photo paper or?
Yeah, there's you probably know Mike Confalone's name. He a railroad explorer, published books, and he uses a printer in Pennsylvania that does very high quality work. So they are, I think the roll is probably, I want to say it's 2 feet or 3 feet wide. I forget how wide it is. So you can print multiple copies of the same backdrop for the same price. So I printed some other backdrops on this one rather expensive to print roll, about $500 I think to print the whole thing up. But I got a lot of backdrop out of that one job. And Mike's very fussy about color. We worked hard to get the tree color to match my super trees, and as you can see, it's just, you know, it's right on. So putting this up really changed the look of that area dramatically. I put this aerial view in so you can kind of see how it looks right now. So there's been a lot of vegetation that's been added in. The purpose of some of this is to sort of disguise the Pocono Northeast going off and disappearing. So the Pocono Northeast is down into this area here. When you're standing there looking at it with the backdrop in place, it really, you know, it just changes it. So really, the main thing I've got to do next is do a nice model of this tower. But that's the view from the tracks. Little bird told me I need to paint the gate yellow, so that's coming.
Like, how long was that strip of paper that you were putting
I
on?
think it was about 14 feet. That's why I was nervous.
Okay, yeah.
But we've got a 22-foot one, I think it is, that's full 2 feet height because it includes the entire sky to do at Mike's house. So we're gonna have more than 2 guys on that one, I think. That's coming up. But it's kind of cool to see the houses that are really there in the background of this view. Here's Taylor Yard. Conrail retained this trackage on the left here. And you really need these 3 tracks because when you come there with your train, you've got some interchange for the G&H, you've got cars that are going to the Kaiser Valley. We usually leave the caboose here, which I believe is what the crew did, because the Kaiser Valley is just a short trip from here. Whereas getting here from Pittston is a much longer run. And there's Pocono Northeast there. Pocono Northeast is a fun job to run because they go all over the place. They've got some of their own tracks. They run on D&H tracks. They run on Conrail tracks. They're in multiple yards. So it's one of my favorite things to do on the layout. And that's Conrail doing their thing on their tracks. Couldn't resist tossing this in. Night shot at Taylor. I've got the light towers and actual lighting on the light towers, and I thought, I wonder how I can get a photo there that with just the yard lighting. So I had to throw that in. Here's the Kaiser Valley Industrial Park. Also kind of a fun job on the railroad. You've got facing and trailing point moves to make here. You've got a runaround that's not of infinite length, so you really have to plan your moves well. And sometimes you have one car too many. You really have to watch what you're doing. This is King Warehouse here, a major distribution center modeled as a fraction of it. This is now, in modern times, this is the AZEC plant, but at that time it was Amenestat Industries. They made air conditioning products, and we got coiled steel on pallets. Rosenstein's produce down here, and Poly High. The silos at Poly High are modeled pretty faithfully. The building is much smaller than the one that's there now. I think it's Mitsubishi now, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I have a picture of it in this presentation, but one of the things that I decided I had to model here was there's a coal load out here in an industrial park. And one of the R&N engineers gave me some pictures of it that he had taken, abandoned, but I was able to include that in the industrial park. So it's kind of cool having coal as part of what you're doing there. That's a Ministad. Oh, yeah, I do have a picture of it. Here's the loadout. Not a great deal of this in my area, but it's nice to have some. This is probably culm, I'm thinking, reprocessed piles probably, and it's trucked to the location. There's a pair of pups on the tail track of the runaround. The coal loadout is just right over here. So, this is one of my favorite views because I got to ride through Vosburg Tunnel on a Reading Northern road job one time, and that was arranged by my buddy Tony V, who was an engineer there at the time. And we switched out the Ransom plant, and then we went up and switched out Mahoopany. I basically spent the whole day with the crew. Nice guys. And what was really interesting was listening to their conversations and the decisions they were making about the moves they had to make. And I thought, these are the same kind of conversations we have when we're switching it out. I felt good about that, actually. Heading back, I had them stop the train, and I went out on the front porch of the SD40-2, and I got a picture of the north portal of Vosburg Tunnel, which is pretty inaccessible otherwise. And that's when I knew I had to model that scene as exactly as possible. So there's a little 3-track east yard here at Mahoopany. Here's chemical yard. Here's the pulp track alongside the plant. And here's a road train coming in, which will definitely have work here. This is the end. This is where a road train heading north passes through Towanda, passing the Agway fertilizer mixing facility. And basically ducks under Tunkhannock and heads off to staging. If anybody hasn't heard enough of me, there's other ways. I do I want to say monthly podcast, but it's really when I get the right interviewee, basically. My podcast is a hopefully interesting conversation with somebody, and you get to listen in. Sometimes it's a video if there's anything worth doing on video. My website here, mrhobby.com, I sell a lot of my old stuff on there. You never know what's going to show up there. Model Railroad Hobbyist is my probably biannual column in there. And I even have a YouTube channel. I mean, who doesn't these days, right? Some of the podcasts are on the YouTube channel. Sometimes layout videos are showing up there, so that's the deal. Anybody have any questions? Sir?
I wasn't here for your original presentation, so I have to ask, why this prototype?
Good question. I mean, I do get asked that a lot, and it's what I ask people when I visit their layouts. What caused you to do that? Before I had found this particular prototype, I used to come to Pennsylvania a lot, rail fanning. Just a great state to bounce around in, and there's railroads everywhere. So once you've done all of the usual popular areas, you start looking around. I mentioned to my buddy Dan Lippert one time all the different places that I had gone in the state, and he said, I've never even been there, and he lives in the state. So I used to do that, and this one time I was in the northeast corner, and I was going down old Route 6 there, and I just happened to look to the left, and I saw the top of a grain elevator above the trees. I turned down that street, and I found Kintner Milling. And it was just such a cool grain elevator that I said, I gotta model this. At that time, I wasn't even like a full prototype modeler. And took all kinds of pictures of that, many of which I used to actually build it. And then I thought, I wonder what's around the corner here. So I looped around the hard U-turn there and came up over the hill. There was the mahogany plant, about the size of, a state. It looked like it just went on forever. And this was, I guess this was pre-9/11, so, you could go anywhere back then, right? I just drove right into the plant, drove down and back, took pictures of the cider mill office and all kinds of things, walked around there, nobody hassled me. And many of those pictures I used for the actual building of a lot of these appurtenant structures. So I went back home and I looked at these things that I wanted to build, and that's when I decided the pool table had to go, and that's where the Mahoopany Peninsula got built. And then you start researching, you start getting more information. And I remember on my podcast group, I talked a little bit about that I was going to start thinking about how I was going to model Pittston Yard. At that time, I didn't even have a Pittston Yard. And I got an IM from this guy, and he says, hey, if you want to tour the yard, I can get that for you. I said, really? Turns out, guy's a Reading Northern employee at the time, super nice guy, and we got along great. And I went down with a couple of my buddies and we picked the hottest possible day of the year to do it, but we got a complete walking tour of every inch of Pittston Yard, and then some. And then at that point, I'm starting to realize this area is just too interesting not to model. I started getting more and more information. Mike Bednar, who's done all kinds of articles and videos and what have you, I ended up meeting him. But before I did that, I had been told by my buddy Tony, who Mike Bednar trained him when he became an engineer. He said, contact Big Mike. He knows all of the operations in your era. So Jamie Sorrentis of TRP was kind enough to forward a letter to Mike Bednar for me. And I didn't hear anything for a while, and I thought, I didn't really expect anything. And then one day in the mailbox, I get this thick manila envelope, and it's handwritten maps and answers to every question that I asked him, and his home phone number, and we ended up having, multiple phone calls, and at which time I would sit there and take notes during the call. I had a legal pad, questions lined out. Guy is just a fountain of information. Also a super nice guy, very, very forthcoming. Once you have all of that information, you just get more and more interested in the area and the prototype. There's a lot going on in this area. And it makes for a very interesting model railroad to run. And I've often said that until you get the whole thing pretty much running, you don't know exactly how much fun it's going to be. And it's been gratifying to find that it's actually way more fun to operate than even I had hoped. So I don't think I'm going to get bored with it. Any other questions? Thanks, everybody.